Okay. I call the Paris Union High School School District special board meeting to order at 5:32 p.m. Next, we have our Pledge of Allegiance. If we can please stand. Place your right hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, invitation to address the Board of Trustees on agendized and non-agendized items. We don't have any takers, so we move to the study session.
So this afternoon, we Candace Rains and Judy Miller had worked on a program to be able to share some of the information about what we're looking at and what we can have planned for the future. So I'd like to turn it over to them to go through what they had put together.
Sarah. All right. What I understood, because Judy wasn't in the discussion that we had, but what I understood, and so what we structured the study session on, was the goals that you had set forth was to determine if an additional school resource officer was needed, and or if perhaps a director of campus security, coordinator, supervisor, whatever that might look like, receiving additional information regarding training and expectations of the campus supervisors. We talked specifically about how they interact with students or don't interact with students, the professionalism of their dress and that sort of thing. So that's how we built the presentation, which is what we understood from you. So I hope we got that right. Otherwise, we're probably in trouble right now. And I'm turning it over to Judy right now. And before I do that, I just want to thank publicly Judy. Campus supervisors do not fall officially in her wheelhouse, and quite frankly, you'll hear through the presentation, there's kind of a dotted line to a lot of administrative levels with campus supervisors, but Grant and I were talking about this the other day. We both very much appreciate the role that she's taken in at trying to provide some training to them, and you can see when you look at the data she put together, she's done a lot of work studying campus supervisors, so thank you for that.
I've never done this. Okay, there we go. Okay. So when the question came up, it's like, okay, let's look and see what other districts are doing, and so I put out some feelers, and I end up having, and actually another district contacted me last night, another one today. But as of yesterday, when we finalized the presentation, I had 31 districts that had responded to some of the questions I'd asked. And these were districts in Riverside, San Bernardino, San Diego, and Orange County. So I wanted to not just focus on Riverside. So of those 31, 4 of them were also high school districts. So as you know, we're the last or the only high school district in Riverside County. So to get some comparisons of other high school districts, I had to go outside of Riverside County. So 4 were high school districts. When I took all the 31, approximately 770,000 ADAs represented by those 31 school districts. The range of ADA range from 10,000 to kind of where we're at to up to 130,000. That's San Diego USD, so that's a pretty big district. When and you'll see, in 93% or 29 of those 31, I got that right, math right, Grant, right? So 93% of those 31 districts, they all had an SRO at each of their high schools. And then when we kind of looked at, there was, in Riverside County, there's only 2 districts that don't have SROs at every high school. One is Beaumont, they don't have any SROs. And then Paris Union, we have, we'll talk about that, but we have a full-time, then we have a part-time at 2 of the other high schools. So that's where we are in Riverside. The other districts, Orange County didn't have any, and Beaumont didn't have any, but everyone else that I got responses from, they all had SROs at each of their high schools, and some of them had additional. So when we look at that, either a director or somebody over of the security position, 8 of the 31 districts that responded had a director or chief of security. Some of them called chief of police, chief of security, director of security, that kind of thing. So the titles were a little different, but 8 of them had that position. 5 of those 8 were in Riverside County. And so when I looked at the 5 that are in Riverside County and I averaged their ADA, is about a little over 22,000. So that was the average ADA for the districts in Riverside County who had that type of position. All the districts with a chief or chief of police or director of security, whatever you want to call that position, all of them had SROs at each high school, and most of those 8 also had additional SROs that would cover middle schools and even some elementary schools. So with the addition of that position, it seems like there was actually, they had a higher percentage of SROs versus not having that position. That makes sense? Yes, that makes sense. You're letting it sink in. Okay. So I want to kind of give you an overview. So we could keep collecting data, but I hope that was still, we did. The other thing is when I went here, let me see, where was it? Yes. So I collected from 31 districts, but we did confirm that all districts in Riverside County except those 2, and I'm not counting the elementary districts. I'm talking about only districts that have high schools. Okay, so now we talk about what is the role of an SRO. And, we talked to principals and assistant principals. We also talked to SROs and other district people and some of the security positions. And so really, one of the main things is their presence all in itself is a deterrent, but both the officer being on campus and even the vehicle outside. So one of the primary things is it's a deterrent. And then one of their missions and their goals is really to make connections with students. So they enforce laws, but they're not there to enforce, ed code. So they're really there to connect with kids. It said educate, mentor, informal counselor, and a law enforcement officer. So also they make connections with students that might have discipline or attendance issues. So all that is about making connections with kids. It also might be the first positive interaction any student or a family has with law enforcement.
I just wanted to jump in on one thing too. A lot of times because of the policing network, they'll start to hear about, kids that are, maybe being not initiated, but first attracted to gangs or to drugs. And so they'll be able to, make a connection, with that kid and then eventually, talk to them and deter that kid, which, is different, of course, than a campus security. On campus they wouldn't have those kinds of connections.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, that's really important, and it feels weird. I guess I should have it where. The other thing when we talk to people is the other role that they felt was that they process issues that need direct law enforcement involvement. So, and we also got some real preliminary, real general numbers from some of the service calls that we get in the different areas of the high schools. A lot of that's confidential. We can't get any detailed stuff from law enforcement. But, things that are related to drug sales, I was kind of surprised to hear how many 5150s they have with students, and then, of course, investigations. And then they handle lots of different investigations. It could actually, something that starts at a school. They've also handled investigations that start off campus, but directly can influence, so something happens over the weekend, we come to school, we find out something, and then they're also investigating. So it's those kind of pieces. The other thing is kind of what Candace was also talking, this link to community issues. And knowing the community and knowing the kids in the community, the families, the generations, that kind of thing. Sometimes, and I've heard a lot of that, when we bring campus supervisors in, we do this update, a gang and drug update. And so I've even heard them talk about, there's established gangs in Paris, there's not established gangs in Menifee. They seem to know who the players are. There's some kind of wannabe things happening in Menifee, or that's just a tagging unit versus, So those kind of things really help make a difference and can influence what happens on campus. When we talk about what kind of additional benefits we get from an SRO, and again, a lot of this is coming from assistant principals, this is coming from, we talked to campus supervisors, so this isn't something, I didn't make this up. It connects with families who seek assistance, provides information so it helps broaden the knowledge of penal code. We can do this, you can't do that. So it's a really good resource for staff, coordinates resources for students in crisis. And I asked what they meant by that. And if you saw the other slide, we talk about the number 5150s. There's a lot of kids in crisis, and so if they're not quite a 5150 where they would be taken away, but they definitely can tell there's some mental health issues. There's called the CREST team, and that's something the SROs can refer kids to, and so that's where that comment came from. Performs wellness checks and home visits. I know sometimes in pupil services or wherever they might go out and go to home visits. The SRO is not there to enforce that, but they're the backup. They can be there if the district staff feel uncomfortable going to a house, so that they're kind of a backup for those types of things. Form relationships with staff, investigate high priority situations. So, and you've been notified, and you're fully aware of, when something happens on campus, as a bomb threat or a shooter, on social media they talk about somebody's going to shoot the campus up. That's, immediately our SROs are involved in that and investigating. I think more recently we had something related to Paris, and so what did they do? They pulled the other SRO, and we had a presence on campus that very next morning. Input, training, they've helped. 360 Defense is something we've been working on for the last 3 years with campus supervisors, and even putting that program together, I had law enforcement, I had risk management, I had campus supervisors from each site, administrators from each site, but we definitely had input on that program, and they helped vet that program out. They've done active shooter training, drug and gang updates, that kind of stuff for us, and for campus supervisors. And then it says, provide informal information. So, again, this came from an AP, and it was something simple. She said, well, shoot, sometimes there's just a helicopter, and we don't know what's going on in the community. So it's just kind of that extra connection to law enforcement in the community, because SRO could tell them what was going on, and they knew whether it was something they had to deal with or something they had to worry about, or was it something far out, that type of thing. I kind of wanted to throw this in, too, because so I'm not sure how much you're aware of. There's a National Association of School Resource Officers. There's also a California Association of School Resources Officers. I this morning talked to a deputy. He is the regional director or something of NASRO, but he's based in LA. And he is, I think he's a deputy. I believe he's on his way to Sacramento this morning, so I didn't quite get if he's an SRO, if he's a deputy that works with SROs. I'm not exactly sure, but he's connected to the National Association. And so part of their information, he sent me a couple, another one of their directors or something sent me a report. So out of that report is some of this information that at the national level, the goal is to provide the highest level quality training to promote safer schools and students, and then have this triad concept of school-based policing, dividing the SRO's contribution, so campus into campus safety in 3 areas: educator, informal counselor, and law enforcement. And that's kind of where I got that, where I put it on that very couple slides ago. So that's kind of the concept behind the SRO, is being an educator, an informal counselor, and then that law enforcement presence on campus. They train law enforcement to educate, mentor, and protect children. School-based policing is one of the fastest growing areas of law enforcement. And I was also talking to the sergeant this afternoon, and he said, and he agreed with that. He said there's more and more, it seems like every district with a high school, they're wanting SROs on their high school campuses. And the reason why it takes so long to get them is just because that is staffing. You have to have staffing. It's not just every deputy. You don't just pull any deputy off the street and say you want to be an SRO. It really takes a certain personality. Has to be. I asked him what he looks for. He said he really wants a deputy with experience, with maturity, who can make decisions, who has a good personality, can speak, and speak to students and staff. And so and then there's some training. There's I think a 40-hour training they go through for school resource officers, but it's the process to get them. So I didn't know that. I've learned a lot. When we talk about our SROs in the district, I think the role itself has actually changed over the last few years, as well as the relationship with the Sheriff's Department. And when I got here, I heard stories, and I wasn't that involved, but we did have a different mentality at some of our schools. Can I use the word cowboy kind of mentality? I just did. So, I know there were some incidents where that kind of thing, and sometimes it's also that line where, they're not there to enforce administrative things, they're not there to enforce the ed code, they're there as on the criminal side. And sometimes they get pulled into, situations because we've heard those stories. And so that was kind of where when I came into the districts, that was kind of what was happening. And then the last few years, we started working more and more with the Sheriff's Department and building those relationships. We were down to one SRO, and then, as you know, we have two now. So I can see that role that has changed. I can see the kind of the attitude between the district and the Sheriff's Department change. I know when stuff comes up, Candace personally has a lot of numbers she can contact, and principals have numbers, and so we really do have that kind of that relationship piece. Right now, we have one full-time SRO at Paris High School, and then we have another full-time SRO who's split between Paloma and Heritage. And when we talk to the Heritage and Paloma principals, it's really evident that split position is really not effective because there's too much time. Even if you spin it down the middle, if you didn't include travel and you didn't include getting called off for other things, it would it's not effective because of that. Because you got the time, you got the travel, and you're getting pulled off here, you're getting pulled off there. So this SRO has assigned days at each campus, but responds to calls from non-assigned sites on a daily basis, just like at Paris High. So we had that, social media potential threat, and what they do, we pull one campus supervisor, so that means two high schools that have a campus supervisor because we pulled them to Paris. Yes, SRO. What did I say? SRO. So I hope that gives you some kind of an overview of the SRO program and why we were looking at adding a third one. The campus supervision, that was also brought up. And so when we look at the campus supervisors, how they're structured in our district, right now they report to a plant supervisor. At the three comprehensive high schools, we have a plant supervisor who oversees campus supervisors and custodial staff. And then at the smaller schools, they typically report to an AP over discipline. We also have a maintenance supervisor who helps with those smaller sites and with the campus supervisors and the campus and the custodians. The primary duties of a campus supervisor, mostly it's patrolling, right? Patrol, make sure we don't have unauthorized persons on campus, clear areas, and ensuring students are in class. It's kind of general supervision, crowd control, certainly big events, football games and all the big events we have on campus are integral and all that, helping with crowd control and directing people. They escort students, parents to and from class, as needed. I monitor radios so I can hear, we need you to come here and get this student or take this person there, so I hear all that stuff. Certainly they respond to emergencies, communicate with, back and forth all day on the site with radios. They patrol the campus parking lots. They're really observing behavior. So the expectations is hopefully they're visible and they're observing and they're reporting. They can deter or report inappropriate behaviors. And then we were talking again to APs, and they're saying, and they help address low-level defiance. If it goes beyond that, that's when they're going to talk to a administrator. This is just a list of a lot of stuff. So we talk about campus supervisor training. When you look across the board at a lot of different districts, everyone, it's state required that AB or SB, or it was 1626, Senate bill, I think it should be SB. 1626, that's that 24-hour training that's required for any security-related staff that work over 20 hours. Some districts had a guard card, which is like, I don't remember how many hours, but it's a lot. And then we had the post, the Penal Code 832, that's powers of arrest. Some districts had this model, level 2, level 1 module certificate, and I asked what does that mean? And it's really it's kind of like night school. So if you're going to be a reserve officer, there's 3 modules that you have to take to be a full law enforcement officer. So some districts do part of that. 360 defense is something that we do. De-escalation, verbal judo, CPI, those are all different. There's different versions of what districts do. First aid and CPR, that they're required to maintain that CPR status. Autistic spectrum, that's something I put in there because I think it's really important. When we've done that training here, we've tried to include campus supervisors. That population of students growing, so they help understand how to work with that population on campus. And then you get all emergency stuff, right? Radio. There's lots of things we could include on training and different things that different districts write down. Some of them have certificates for baton and mace or handcuffs. There's lots of different things. So what's right for us, and that's kind of where we came down to. Right now, we're just kind of collecting, seeing kind of what other people do, letting you know a little bit about what we are doing, and then with the potential to study it and kind of bring more information back, like, you know, if you're looking for a plan to put the whole thing together. Our positions right now for campus supervisors, and when I looked at it, campus supervisors, campus security, there's different levels, campus assistant. When I looked at, no, this is across, yeah. When I have a whole pile of job descriptions I've been looking at, but the biggest thing is campus supervision or campus security. So there's different names for both, and there's different levels, but that's really the two big categories when you talk about the classified position. Some districts have different levels, some of them difference by grade. They might have noon duties or campus assistants or campus supervisors in elementary and middle, and then the campus security at high school, or like us, we have campus supervisors for both middle and high school. There's difference in expectations. I was looking at our job descriptions. There's actually stuff in our job descriptions I don't think they're doing. It talks about investigations and writing reports, difference in training. Again, the previous slide talks about all the different things they could be trained in. There's difference in pay, difference in job description. So, there's just a lot of moving parts if you're looking at restructuring or what would you want to do. So, and then of course any change to any current structure would all have to go through CSEA. The other piece you talked about or you asked about was uniforms. So currently, this is for our campus supervisors. They wear a gray polo. It has campus supervisor in white on the gray polo. They can wear their choice of shorts or pants, and it's not strictly enforced. Now, I started really looking at the sites, and some of them are wearing polos, some of them are not. At some point, maybe 6 years ago, I was actually handling their uniforms as far as distributing them and getting them to them. But then HR took that over. I know they were looking at maybe changing that. So honestly, I don't even know. I think there's some, because I know some of the conversations I had was they were trying to decide, are we going to change that or do we keep ordering the same color? So I don't even know if some of them are not wearing it because they don't have the shirt, or the shirts are, I don't really know. But I do know that we've been told, administrators have said not everyone even wears their shirts, and we don't know why yet because we need more time to look into that. Certainly some districts have more professional uniforms, and I was reading through some manuals. I collected 4 or 5 from different districts' handbooks, and they talk about real specific uniforms that are required to wear, and different uniforms for different types of activities. And some
of them down to the belt.
Yeah, the type of belt, the type of hat, the type of hat for the weather. There's a different hat for different weather conditions. So certainly what's happening here could certainly be improved by having more of a strict uniform, making sure everyone has it, and then following through on that. That would make, I think, kind of raise that level of professionalism. And then again, any changes would be subject to negotiations. I keep waiting. There you go. Yeah, not a baton.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry. I don't have training for that. Sorry. It's been 2 weeks since our last board meeting. We tried to pull as much information as we possibly could. I actually don't think I've heard this said better than Judy at the beginning of her presentation at the last board meeting, that the safety of student and staff is the most important thing that we collectively, do. You direct us to do that, and, it's our job, to carry that out. So we took the mission that you gave us in preparing for the study session seriously. We believe that there is a lot of room for improvement, but to restructure school site security on the level that we believe you're talking about, and after doing some studying, we collectively think that that's necessary as well. It's going to need a well thought out plan. Hiring a director or a supervisor of security and new job descriptions, that's not going to happen by the start of this next school year. we would really need the support and the buy-in from all the stakeholders, campus supervisors, CSEA, changes to, as well as you know probably best, changes to job descriptions and working conditions, are negotiable. We really think all of this, there's a potential here and that it's really, really positive and that our employees would be on board. But I think as we all know, we can't just, impart that on them. We have to actually be involved in discussions. So our recommendation following this study session is that because we can't have this in place by the start of the school year, that we go ahead and do an amendment to the contract, adding the third SRO. One of the questions I know somebody had asked before and we have an answer for now, we can enter into that contract, and if we decide it's not working or we come up with a new system as part of, you'll see we're going to recommend a committee, we can terminate that SRO or all the SROs or two of the SROs with 30 days notice. So I don't think there's a risk to the district by entering into that contract so that we could at least have those three SROs. And then we think the best way to handle this is to form a committee that would include CSEA and HR and pupil services, and obviously we need Judy's expertise in risk management, various other school and department representatives like Art Fritz and M&O and that sort of thing, and really just study what's going to be the best for the Paris Union High School District. Does that look like new job descriptions? Are they elevated? And if we do come up with new job descriptions, what does that look like? Do we grandfather everybody in, even though some may not be capable of doing, what we would then be asking of? And so then we have to make decisions. So there's lots of conversations, other districts that have gone through this, they've had people apply for that new job, and then they've not terminated anybody because of it. Certainly they could have if we wanted to lay off, an old position. That's not what we're saying, though. But anyway, there's just a lot of studying to be done with this. We think we're jumping the gun if we were to move to hire a director or coordinator, chief, whatever, of security to help study this, though that may be part of the plan, perhaps that the committee could come up with. So in the interim, we were thinking there's probably a lot of retired law enforcement officers out there that we could hire on as a consultant, just to help us and guide this committee through the work that we're proposing that they would be doing. So if that's what the board desires for us to do, we thought about what a timeline would look like. And so at the May board meeting, we would ask that you would approve that addendum to the contract. Hopefully we could recruit and have a contract ready to go in June for a consultant, possibly, again, the retired law enforcement. In July of 2017, well, just over the course of the summer, that's where we could do, on the back end, we could do some initial planning, pulling more job descriptions. How do we present this information to the committee rather than give everybody little assignments? We could have these job descriptions ready to go, have organizational charts that other districts use, have the training models that other districts use, maybe the pros and cons of each. Maybe we could even set up for different presentations to be made by some of the districts that we feel do a really good job to come in and talk with that committee. Then we could have the committee work, probably, this is rough, but August to October, that could be our target anyway, with an action plan being presented to the board in November. And then in December, because any changes, as you know, would require negotiations with CSEA, so then we could begin that process at that point. So that's our proposal and proposed timeline. I know that was a lot of information. Any questions?
Does this work? Yeah, because it does.
You probably better get up
Okay,
here, my
that
partner
will
in crime.
What did the SROs do all day?
What do
During
they
this,
do all day? They are out and about on campus. They are talking with kids, interacting with kids. I've even seen them out throwing a football as a way to sort of get that in. They're dealing with crime that occurs. You actually, unfortunately, you weren't here at the last board meeting, but there was a whole presentation on that. So I know we kind of breezed through it. Do you want to add to that?
Well, like the mission, of course, is interacting with kids, but the reality, too, is that law enforcement presence.
Oh, I'm really deaf.
Can you hear? Is that better?
I can't really hear you very well.
Well, the main thing is with kids. Is that better?
Uh-huh.
But of course, the law enforcement presence, there's lots of pieces that entails. And so when we talk about a 5150, we talk about kids in crisis, mental health, those types of things. And when those kind of things happen, then that's a long process. That's an investigation, that's paperwork. So they're certainly involved in reports and investigations.
Okay, so at that time, there's somebody on campus, right?
Pardon me?
But during that time, there's nobody on campus.
It depends. A lot of times they have an office where they can keep confidential information, and they can keep what do you call it when they confiscate stuff? Evidence. Yeah, thank you. When they have evidence or drugs or things that they confiscate, contraband. There you go.
I think you're right.
So they have a secure place where they can keep confidential items and records. And so the other day, Candace and I were at one of the schools, and we went into the office. So the SRO was in the office. He had just done some interviews, working on an investigation, so he was inside the office. But the goal is, the more and more they can be proactive, is to be on campus.
Okay.
But what they don't do anymore, which you've been in the district a long time, Carolyn, and
Sorry, what?
what they don't do anymore, they used to sit in their office primarily the whole day. Some of them even had the access to the computer screens that had security cameras. They would sit and just watch those all day.
Oh, wow.
They'd handcuff kids, kid chewing gum, kid wouldn't take his hat off, and we were talking to the sergeant a couple of weeks ago, and he's got a relatively new SRO, not in our district, but the SRO called him and said, God, these administrators keep getting on me. They want me to go deal with the kid that won't take his hat off. And, and he said, but you're telling me I can't do that. He said, if you don't have anything to do and you're just walking around campus, then you're doing your job.
Right.
It used to be also.
I'll just have one more thing about a bunch of questions, but so when you enter the campus, you have to, at least at Paloma, you walk quite a ways before you actually get someone questions you, or you have to show your ID and all that. So during that time, I mean, they could just shoot the person sitting there. Do these SROs or the people at the desk, anyone have a gun?
The SROs have a gun, yes, but the people sitting at the desk or at the gates do not. And, the sad truth of it is you're absolutely right. There generally is one person that they first encounter, whether that be at a gate, depending on how the schools are structured, and I don't know how, your school is structured, but some you open a door and now you're in an office at a reception, some you're meeting someone at the gate.
Right.
But you're absolutely right. Someone could shoot that one person, and then they're through, and
Is there any way anyone could be at the gate before they could actually
like an armed person? Because there is a person.
Yeah. I mean, really an armed person. You're talking to
Yes,
someone
there
that's
could be, but that would be very costly.
It's what?
Very costly.
Costly. If we're talking about an SRO or a deputy whose job it is just to stand at the first point of contact, if I understand the question correctly.
I don't know. That seems like, wouldn't parents want you to have that, even if it costs
The
more?
question is, can we afford to do that at every site? That's the question.
Well, can we afford not to?
It comes down to numbers.
Right. So there's many options to do something like that, and it doesn't necessarily have to be an SRO. What we're talking about with the SRO, it costs $180,000,
Right.
and that's mainly what we're talking about. If our district decided to create its own police department, we're talking about millions of dollars to start the program, and then a salary for that officer to be armed. And of course, you can bring that cost down, pay them $50,000, $60,000 a year for whatnot, but that beats $180,000. So yes, it's possible, but would you get your bang for your buck is the question. And I think that's what they're promoting and advocating for right now as well. I'm not against it, but there's options.
And I think that's something, I think we should approach, if you agree with our recommendation, I would say we should approach the work of the committee with no preconceived notions. Nothing's off the table, and that should be something that is discussed at the committee.
I had a few questions, but it's going to take us back to the beginning a little bit. Just when, Judy, you were talking about the SROs, what information they get, and they're in contact with the kids and all that. You know, the WeTip program, do they get that information directly? Does that go to the deputies or the sheriffs? Or where does that go?
The WeTip information, if everyone knows what WeTip is a 800 anonymous crime reporting hotline. So the WeTip operators will direct. So we can. I'm just trying to think. So I get stuff if it's related to the school, and then we can pass it on to counselors or principals. It goes to law enforcement. So when we fill out that form every year, actually I do that, we give them the SRO sergeant's contact number. So if someone would go directly to an SRO, it would go to the SRO sergeant if we had a tip coming in from the community.
Okay, how active is that? Is it?
You know what? I go to
Quiet.
quarterly board meetings for our JPA, and we in our area there's not very many. It's active. It's not that active in our area. There'll be a couple in Menifee, a couple in Paris, and a lot of times it's drug sales, and then that goes to law enforcement. The WeTip, we have it. We talk about it with new employee orientation. We have it in some of our documents. We have signs, but that's something we could certainly try to increase the community's awareness of that.
I remember hanging the
availability.
signs for many years. So
I know, yeah.
I was thinking about that.
You were great at that, too.
Well, we got them up there, and I don't know how active it was or what it did.
Well, it did help with some stuff. I mean, we
Okay.
did get some tips when we put specific signs up when an incident would happen, and we would fly. We would create a flyer. We would get information. Sometimes those tips did help.
Okay, good. I'll just go down my list real quick. Outside calls taken by the SROs when they're at our site. That was always, I think, one of the comments that we talked about. They jump up and leave and take a call with their department, which, of course, if there's an officer in need, or I'm not against that, but it does. What's in our contract? What are they supposed to do for us?
There isn't anything like that in our contract, and many, many years ago, they were often all over the place. So what the protocols are now is they are not to respond to outside calls, outside of the school district, I should say. If something happens at Pinacati, we might send Deputy Robles, because he's at Paris High, over there. As Judy mentioned, when we had the suspicion of something may happen at Paris High, just for increased presence, we moved the Paloma officer there. Now, I think if it was an all hands on deck, maybe a shooting or something, that may happen. But I mean, I guess I would say in exchange, we get a lot of help just because of our relationship with the sheriff's department, where other deputies will come in and help us as well. So.
I wouldn't expect them to sit there and there's a robbery going on.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
No,
that's not really addressed in the contract, but I can
Okay.
tell you it's a lot different today than it was 4 and 5 years ago, 10 years
We've
ago.
had that discussion with the sergeant and the
Yeah.
lieutenant that
Yeah.
we want them on our campus at all time. We're paying them
Yes.
unless there's an extreme emergency where they need to go. They're going to be on campus.
Okay.
Grant and I were even talking the other day because we saw an email, and this assistant principal did not do anything wrong because we have not told them otherwise, but they called one of the SROs themselves and asked them to go to Pinacati. And we're going to be doing some training with our administrators on safety. We have 6 sessions actually set up, and so we're going to talk about perhaps even changing that protocol. If the SRO is not assigned to your campus, you do a call for service.
Okay. The next item was because I was a plant supervisor and was in charge of the campus supervisors. I agree. First of all, I just want to say I agree with you taking it slow and really getting the opinions and going really thoroughly. There's no rush. It's a 30-day deal, so don't feel any. My opinion is don't rush. Plant supervisors and APs, do they have the same training to deal with the campus supervisors?
That's kind of the question, and quite honestly, the question you posed really got all of us thinking, and there isn't one person in this district that is trained as a supervision expert. I mean, there's pieces in people services, there's pieces in risk management, there's pieces with the assistant principals and with the plant supervisors, but it is no one person's ultimate responsibility. So that's where we see a big
And
hole.
we've talked about restructuring that the way it's done right now. Because with the plant supervisor, you were an anomaly because of your experience working with the fire department.
Yeah.
But most of our plant supervisors are former custodians or maintenance workers. So how much do they have experience working with security? Our administrators, they know student discipline and dealing with kids. So we're talking about kind of splitting how they're dealt with. The plant supervisor will work with them if they need to schedule them for events, school activities and things like that. But the administrator will be the one to direct their work, because they should be at least until we can figure out if we're going to have a director or how that's going to work. But
Didn't your numbers say the average ADA for a district that had a director or something of that comparable position was 22,000?
Yeah, they're twice as
Yeah,
big.
twice as big as what we are now, more than twice as big. So, I mean, the question has to be asked, do we pay for somebody to be at a director level, somebody new, for something that should be over something twice our size? The question
Train
has to
who
be
we
raised
have.
on where would this person be? What other duties would they have? There's a lot of other stuff that has to go into it.
that's where that time that just studied and trying to figure out how we need to proceed
And
with.
I don't know in a district our size that it has to be a director level.
Yeah.
I don't know that it has to be full-time. Maybe because of like the PERS restrictions for a retiree, maybe it's an opportunity for part-time. I think if we stood here after 2 weeks and said we had all the answers, you should be you should be questioning us in a different way.
If I may make some comments really quickly, I agree with you about a consultant. Why? Because I think in closed session I made the comment, when you have someone who specializes in that field, they can give their expertise. Again, I use the analogy, I like to use mechanic and the brain surgeon. Both great with their hands, but if you want your brain surgeon working on your car, and you want your mechanic working on your brain. To me, that's a no-brainer, right?
No pun. Right.
Right. So I would want someone who specializes in that field to oversee, for example, I hate to reference my district, but where I'm employed, they clear us if we ever have to go hands-on. Well, can you investigate that situation right now and say, you know what, you're absolutely right, everything you did was correct, or can you say you were wrong, or is it based off of an opinion?
I see what you mean.
You know, it's not necessarily the number. We got to stop thinking as educators. Now we have to think safety, and that's something in the academy we're taught. Safety is one thing, education is another. I'm not a specialist with education. My specialty is in healthcare, and that's what I want to highlight. Everyone has their expertise, and I agree with you in regards to consult. And I don't think we need to rush. I like the SRO idea, but it seems like we're highlighting that SRO is more proactive than our own campus superintendent. So why do we employ campus supervisors?
Well, and maybe we should make this clear. None of what we said about campus supervisors was to demean or degrade them in any way. We have wonderful campus supervisors, and the key is they're working within their current job description. And just like any classification of employees, especially a large classification of employees, there's ones that just do their job, there's ones that go above and beyond, and then there's ones we got to work on. And so I would say we really do. I mean, you probably remember, Tony, some great campus supervisors and go above and beyond, but
Well, you also point out the difference between campus supervisor and campus security.
correct.
That's two different things as well.
Yeah.
So, we can get to establish that, the difference between those.
I'm totally on board with that, but I also look at things from the community's perspective. If something's happening in a parking lot and my child is there attending campus supervisor, campus security, I want them to intervene. You didn't mention that they bring up fights. Do they bring up fights?
They do.
Okay, so then in one way it can be physical, so we have liability. So are people trained? There's so many questions to think about.
Yeah.
And this is why I agree again with results. We shouldn't be focused on numbers of students. We should be focused on what is their purpose and how they protect everyone on campus.
Site, I know the high schools have leads.
No.
And when you talk talked about the breaking up fight piece. That's what the 360 is. So that question kept coming up. I would be doing training, that question kept coming up. And so it's taken it's been a 3-year thing. We started out with kind of almost a pilot program, if you will. This is our 2nd year. We've had really, really positive responses from not just campus supervisors, but assistant principals. Again, we took that program slow, too. We got a lot of input, a lot of vetting. And what it is, it's a non-pain compliant restraint. So how can you safely restrain a student as a last resort? It has to be a danger to themselves or danger to others. That's absolutely the last resort, put a hands on a kid. But I also don't want injuries. I don't want staff being injured, and I don't want kids being injured. So that's what the 360 is. And so this is our 3rd year of implementing that program.
I noticed that you mentioned CPI training as well. Are you aware that the author who designed CPI training designed it for instructional aides, not campus supervision?
I'm a certified CPI instructor, so after 8 years of teaching CPI, that's honestly where all this came from, because I would be teaching CPI, and then we never actually taught the restraints. We only taught it at Paris High School a few years ago, because we had one of our APs was also an instructor, and then she was there to kind of reinforce and make sure that you have to give them time to practice. It can't just be a one-time, once a year, okay, now go out and do those restraints. And so it was effective at Paris High because they were a team and they worked together. Grant actually helped me train them.
You were
But
certified.
yeah, he was. We trained together for a few years. But when you talk, but we absolutely saw that CPI, and if you're familiar with it, the restraints, on CPI, 2 on me and 2 on her, we'd never have enough campus supervisors or campus security available for a fight. So that's where I've been looking, how can we answer the question? I've talked to multiple districts. What do you guys use? And so that's where this kind of that's where the 360 came from, because I was looking for an answer. They kept asking, what do you want us to do? We had a substitute who put their hand on a kid. We had a problem. I just kept getting involved in that question, and I didn't have the answer. And I talked to multiple districts, so that's where the 360 came from. Because for campus supervisors, CPI doesn't meet that need.
Right, and when we started CPI, it wasn't specifically for campus supervisors. We were doing office staff, we were doing the instructional aides, but we invited the campus supervisors also, just another tool in their belt for de-escalation techniques with kids when they're going off. How can we get them to calm down and try to work with them and go through that? That's what it was more, but it wasn't geared just for campus supervisors.
Right, and with your campus supervisors, did they give you input about the CPI training? What did they say about it? Because I know most people in security who taken the course, and San Bernardino that I know, Riverside, and Beaumont, actually I want to touch base on Beaumont too, but they don't like it because it's techniques on literally how to be abused themselves. And it's to be evasive. You're allowing the minor or the subject, what we call, to cause damage. And so they're not necessarily being restrained.
Right.
You're just getting out of harm's way, and they're still causing damage to whatever's around them.
Right, and the part we were trying to teach them is just to keep themselves safe. If someone was attacking them, how could they safely protect themselves? And we weren't teaching the restraint part or how they would restrain a kid if they needed to. So we were more working on the de-escalation and trying to keep themselves safe.
The focus of that was really trying to keep it at that level before it became a physical interaction. But you're absolutely right, and we did listen to campus supervisors. That's why we brought in that's why I kept looking, and we found 360, and that's why we have that program in place, because the de-escalation piece, I think, is important for everybody who works with any person, right? You're right, and then. But the restraint piece didn't meet the need, so that's why we didn't teach it. We kept looking for something, but you're absolutely right, and we absolutely listened to them. That's why we have this other program for the physical piece of it. It also includes a lot of mental preparedness and also some de-escalation.
They're supposed to wear the same shirt. They don't. Quite honestly, they didn't file a grievance. They just complained that they were being singled out, that they weren't allowed to wear school spirit shirts and others were. And I think that's sort of how it's evolved, that the administration decides just, and that's, yeah, but it's,
We're going to make a change on that.
yeah, but that's not okay. It probably was. You know, and
We're all here to do a job of support, and we're all paid one way or another. And I think it's simple. If you're given a uniform, you wear it because the community's expectation. That's what we're here for, the community and the children. So when I went with Mr. Bennett on a couple campuses, I didn't recognize them right away because it was a gray T-shirt. It's common color. I understand uniforms, but you would think they'd be somewhat identifiable. I'm not saying the bright yellow because that's ridiculous. I'm just saying identifiable.
Yeah.
And to see people in basketball shorts, painted clothes, sweat all over, hello, put in a record or something for a new shirt, something. But that's where we're at, lack of communication from somewhere.
yeah, no, we completely agree. We've got a lot of work, to do. I mean, everything that was said, that we need an expert, that we could be too small. I think all of that needs to be, determined. And, maybe it looks like we just hold them to their current job descriptions. Maybe we elevate the job descriptions. Maybe it's a part-time director. I don't think she can work any more hours in a day.
But I do agree with you, Mr. Garcia. I think one of the first steps is get them in a uniform that they look consistent and they're presentable on campus.
And Judy and I talked a lot about this. We really think that, if you agree with our plan of forming the committee, that in general, our campus supervisors are going to, and CSCA, they're going to be very excited by the prospect of changing job descriptions and, feeling, more professional and, that. Because, sometimes when you raise the expectation, that's when they meet or exceed. And so. Yes. Yeah, no, definitely. It was red and then pink and then gray. Well, they braided, they faded.
So they,
Sorry, I should have prefaced that.
but they voted, they didn't want red anymore, so they voted the gray. And then we facilitated, okay, what would that look like? And we did have a couple of the leads, and actually I was involved in that just to help facilitate it. And we found a company who could handle the range of sizes that was needed. And that was probably 6 years ago. And then, that piece of it got handed over, so HR was kind of handling the ordering and getting the shirts out. But
I'm really struggling with why we have to negotiate what color they're wearing. So that's something we need to talk to Cinda about, because if we determine that we're giving you a uniform, as long as it's professional looking, why should you get to say, no, I don't want to wear that color?
I would like to mention a couple of comments. First of all, I want to say thank you for your thorough preparation. You invested some time, significant amount of time, getting the data and putting it together and all that. We appreciate that. Yeah, yeah. And I think having an SRO is really, really important. And I agree that it's a deterrent, the officer and the patrol car being there. Also, what Ed mentioned, I think is really important. And I'm wondering if we provide the uniforms, and that is something that there is no reason not to do it, what other things are not happening? Because what is on paper is beautiful, right? And we talk about and we can say whatever we want about the safety of our students, but the actions is what really matters, right? So we have just that one element that is so easy to control, right? Independent of if we are going to give the color or not. For me, what is the main goal of having a uniform to be identified, right? Independently of the color, you decide the color. I say to my campus supervisors, so something that you is going to be easily identifiable. You are happy with that, but you are going to do it. It's not an option. So if it's not happening, and I'm glad that it is there, we are taking responsibility for that. It's not their fault that they are not wearing it. It's ours.
You're
Because
right.
we are not making sure that they do it, right? Yeah, we are not holding them accountable. So
easily.
there is one simple, it's so easy, so basic. We don't even to talk with the president of the union. This is your job. We are paying. You just have to do it, right?
We're providing.
We are providing that. So now, what other things are not there? So why don't we focus also, if we approve this, your plan and all that, but with a commitment that we are going to ensure, we are going to make sure that the basic elements are really happening, right? I mentioned last time, and I recognize that it was a one time only that I saw the campus supervisor during lunch, right? Being together, talking, when the students, they were wandering around, right? That is another thing that it was there, that they supervise, that they patrol, and we have wonderful supervisors, and it's not fair for the wonderful supervisors to tolerate the ones who are not that wonderful, that we need to act upon that, right? And I understand that for some administrators it might be easier, okay, we pick your battles. The easiest thing to do is to turn to the other side, right? And don't do anything, because it's not easy, yeah? Then there is going to be, and people is going to try, you know. And usually the ones who don't do their job, oh, the morale, why are you doing this? But the excellent supervisors, campus supervisors, they appreciate that you hold the other people accountable, because that is the right thing to do. And if we mean that safety is our priority, we mean it, and we have to do that. So something that we are expecting, and I think I'm saying we at this time, right, is that the basic elements ensure that the minimum basic elements are happening. Because I'm wondering what else is not.
To touch bases on that, consistency is important. And my mentality might be a little bit different, but I think if you have, I'm just going to put you out there, two you've overseen that for whatever reason. It's across the board. Every site operates the same way without different opinions running the efficiency. One year, it doesn't have to be a director. You know, I just do that out there because
That's what you have, yeah. Yeah, we get it.
but I'm just saying, someone with knowledge, you can give the yay or nay. It's okay, you're going to do this, you're not going to do that. But I want you to do this, you can do better. We're going to motivate them to challenge them. In the uniforms, I'm telling you, that's going to, funny boy, because they're going to go, oh wow, you care about us. When I see people with Indian hats and Indian shirts, there's a gentleman who has a sweater, and I'm told, he quotes, I am not going to order a new sweater until they give me a new sweater. And I believe that pair is hot. His sweater is so faded, it's salty, it's gross. I was ashamed to say, hey, I'm a district security officer myself. I was ashamed, I didn't tell him. But that hurts, you know, he wants you to cry when people are, especially with kids. You know, I take my babies with who I work with. I want to know who I'm here for you.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, maybe the other one. One more comment was we identify that situation of the system. Do you think a ban is enough if we told in June, when you go to any school for the graduation or any activity, whenever you see a campus supervisor, it's going to be a June. Because we are paying that, and we are making sure that they are doing their job. Do you think a ban is reasonable to make sure that we are doing what we're supposed to do?
I think it's possible, but I would hate to stand here and commit to, because I believe we have contract language where they have to get 10 shirts, so you multiply 10 shirts times all the people, and what's the production time, you know, for a vendor, you know, is Judy or whoever going to arbitrarily just make the decision? I think we even have a contract language that might say it's so we could make a change, and I agree we don't need to negotiate it. Yes. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. No, we give them a certain number. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can stand here and feel very comfortable committing to you that we'll make this, I don't want to say the number one priority, but, something that doesn't sit on the bottom of the list, and work as fast as we can. Yes. Yes, yes.
Yes, because there's enough districts out there with that. So, and I've talked to some of them, so we can help. They can help us with the vendors that can accommodate this, the ordering, the ordering number we would need, the size ranges we would need. I mean, yes, it's a.
I mean, off the top of my head, I'm thinking, I would like to look at the supply of uniforms we have currently. I know HR just made an order. And so maybe it's as simple as you're going to wear the gray polo, and maybe we have I forget the Cintas, maybe, our maintenance uniform vendor. Maybe they come out and they're fit for, black pants. We do for M&O. I don't know. Off the top of my head.
I'm thinking we even just require them. You're wearing black Dickie shorts or black Dickie pants, and that's your work clothes are.
Did you use a 30% off coupon? Well, I'm just saying that would be something we could do simple is say the gray polo and black bottoms. Yeah. Just to get the use out of them for, Yeah, they're in big white
You wanna go get
letters. Sure.
Because I want to expedite this too. You're not going to be creating patches and all that, extra changing everything.
Yeah. I'm just saying it's a quick fix as we study what it may look like.
So-
Let's say we have different levels. We may have people that look like private security with some sort of a badge and a baton and I don't know.
So we'd even have to look at, we've had campus supervisors there for years. Are their shirts worn out now and need to be replaced? Do we have to have a refresh
So
system?
I'm thinking use your existing uniform now.
Cycle them through.
Upgrade the shorts for basketball shorts. So,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, like Dickies that are work shorts or something.
So we're talking basically about enforcing what's already the rules. Yeah.
And everybody was given one.
You should model it. I'm kidding.
Yes.
Supervisor was given one of those?
Yeah, at the very beginning. I don't think. Now this, most of everything over there, HR hasn't locked up. So this might be an older shirt.
I've seen most of them in that
This is an older shirt that probably somebody returned it. The new one is not there.
But there was a process set up. Now, how well it's carried out by, right? We did have some new ones print I've seen with the new logo, but they're issued. I think the number's 10, but whatever it is, they're issued those. They're supposed to come back to HR if they need more, or not more, but if they get a tear, if it's faded, or something like that. So we do have a process. How well it's followed,
At the end of the year, bring all your stuff back to there.
But yeah, you've got like a patch on. Oh, that's a polo. A patch and a. Yeah. Okay. You want to see? That's a polo. He said. Yes.
We getting pushback from the union because they can bring that concern back, right? We are not part of the school spirit and things like that. Taking in consideration also the spirit of this policy, what is the ultimate goal? Is to get would we be willing to say, okay, what are the colors from this? Select the colors from the school and the supervisor and just change the colors. That for because we want them to be happy, to be okay, to be proud of
Sorry, I was trying to listen to both. You know, we
And that might work, but I just want to say, when it comes to ordering and when people move around and when they work in a football game,
like overtime rotation for events.
can I talk? I don't know if it's your current manual, but the one I read 4 different district manuals, and so they do have a district-wide standardized uniform, but they have different versions. Like he said, he has a dress one, he has a polo, they have shorts, they have pants. But then there are spirit days where they are wearing their striped shirts. So there are days for that. I totally understand, because I've talked to campus supervisors about why can't we wear different colors, and but I can tell you that when you go to a football game, I mean, it just complicates it with the ordering. I'm just saying, with the sizes and all, to try to keep the inventory. But they do have days where you can wear the school colors, or maybe every site does have a uniform that is their color, and then they have the standard color for most of the time, or they have the standard color for football games. So when they all come together, they're just
Give them 9 of the standard color and 1 of the school color. That way on the school days they can
But
wear
like you said, they still have the patches, because you guys have the patch here and the patch here and the name tag or something.
the star running.
Yeah.
The reason that I'm saying is to look at options, because we don't want that, too many medals is an excuse why they stop with that, right? So if it, it's going to be complicated in women and daughter, is how often do we make those options?
Right.
Is that a month, not a semester, right?
Yeah.
So now that's the goal. Uniforms, because we're lucky if we get 5 a year.
Oh, wow.
So I'm just saying with the idea of for number 80 to show our employees that we care about them, we're going to be happy with that. Yeah, you selected that color, you selected. And I'm not saying do that. Okay? I'm just giving a suggestion.
Right.
We want them to be happy, so they are proud.
We want a balance. Yeah.
We balance both things. You are going to, this is not negotiable. You are going to do that. How are you going to do it? If that is the case, but if we can do both things, that's fine.
Well,
As long as they wear it, that's the case.
And I think Tony's absolutely right. Those we have some amazing, we really do have some really fantastic campus supervisors. And I go to them all the time for other things. I'm not, I wasn't taking care of the shirts, but recently, we do have some really good people who really know, they really care about the kids, they really know their campuses, they really know their community. And so I would definitely want to bring those people in.
And I believe, I don't know if this is the right way to do it, we'd have to talk to CSEA, but I believe if we had almost an immediate, let's say the board approved this plan we've proposed, if we had almost an immediate, just a quick debriefing, hey, the board asked us to look at this, we're going to be setting up a committee, but in the meantime, we need your help, so that they know all this is on the horizon. Do you know what I mean? I think that could, right. Right. And we bring the leads perhaps in with Cinda, and that's just off the top of my head.
Just a couple of thoughts. I watched them fight over wearing jeans and maintenance, and I thought it was the most idiotic thing I've ever seen. Having worn a uniform for 20 years, there was no negotiation. My men lined up on a line at 0800, and you better be in uniform or you're sent home. I know this is the school district, it's not the military, it's not quite as, but
Remember that.
so when you come with the new, they like to point the finger, well, they got to do this or they got to do that. Well, you have to draw the line somewhere, and I think you're at the right point. Let's go with what we have on the books, and then make our improvements from there.
I would love to have a uniform that I knew what I was going to wear every day when I got up
Yes.
to work.
I was thinking the same thing.
No.
Just give me a shirt and a pair of pants. I'm ready to go to work. That's good for me.
Made it easy.
Can that be our next study session?
Yeah.
I'm kidding. Cabinet uniform. Do you want to be?
Yes, I want a uniform.
I was just going to say, yeah, I support that idea because, if you were offered a job, would you really say, I will wear that?
You'd be
Of course
surprised
you're
some
going to
things
wear
we do.
whatever your boss tells you to wear.
There's no wiggle room for that.
It's
Maybe a little arbitrary.
dumb.
Especially if it's not if it's already in the contract language.
Right.
There's no requirements of that. And that's why we supply the shirt, because it's in the contract language.
They got the 10 shirts. so I could see them when it's bad weather.
That was your non-negotiable.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
remember that.
Because at Heritage, that bad storm, they were walking across the parking lot, I could hardly see them. So I said, absolutely no black raincoats, has to be yellow. They didn't wear them very often.
Also, ensuring last week there is some well, we have from in every aspect, not only uniforms. If we have, you are going to be patrolling, ensure that they are patrolling.
Yeah.
If we said no cell phones, making sure that they are not going to be on their cell phones distracted while the students are, and then we break up the fight when we could have started before it started, being proactive. And with the administrators also to tell them, let's do what is right, what is in the contract, obviously, and careful not to abuse, but do what is right. And they are not afraid that if they bring something out, they ensure that the things are happening, they are going to get the support and support. And in my experience working with the union, if you have that show the evidence, something is not right, then what else are you going to have? Yeah, as long as they are not abusing, if they are not abusing the process or something. Yeah, they're quick to bring up their contract saying, administration's supposed to be doing this. Now he's like, well, you guys are supposed to be doing this. Supposed to be doing this. Yeah. So, but it is important that everybody knows that we can do what is right without being afraid of. That's what the sort of pushback at the beginning. But once you have clear expectations, we make sure that this is happening. But that follow through with accountability, how do you have it? And not to be rude, I would, in our current situation, I would put that on the APs, not the plant supervisor. I would put that responsibility on them. That should be an all you want. You're right, okay.
In it,
But as of right now, plant supervisors are in charge of campus supervision.
Or assistant principals, depending on the campus.
but they work really closely with the AP. So in their defense, honestly, there's kind of blurred lines, right? So that's part of the issue too. So it's getting everybody on board.
Personally, I'm good with the plan that you guys have laid out in terms of what our are now and we can figure out what would be our best option down the road. That's my opinion. I agree. And also, guys, with the understanding that we're promised semester.
But it is recorded and then posted on the website.
Okay. The reason that I'm saying this is because I want to start fostering that environment that we can trust each other in a very respectful way, saying with honesty how we feel and what we think, right? Because that is the commitment that we have normalized, right? And I hope that not only we say we are going to do, right? And we give you as one example. I'm still waiting for the segregation on suspension by educated practice. Many African Americans, some with Hispanics, some with this, and that is not happening, right? And this is my third year. I'm starting the third year already. So from now on, we are not going to forget about the things, and I'm asking not to forget also, right? To the contrary, you can.
You remind me, I'll remind you.
Without being afraid of obviously we are going to do it in a very respectful way,
Okay. Well, I'd like to agree because what seems like such a small issue actually is there's a long trail to it. Yes, and we would like to be able to talk about any subject without anybody's feelings being hurt or taking it personal. You know, we'd have to change some things and we'd have to discuss it because it takes the board itself to do it, no one person. So, you know, we just it's never a personal issue. And, you know, I thank you guys also for taking so much time and really coming
And
up
I agree
with
with you with all what I've said about what you've said about working together and being trusting. You know, we're here to follow the direction what the board wants us to do. We trust that you're going to be making the right choices, and then it's on us to make sure that we're following through on those things. And it would never be feel like it's a personal attack towards us if the direction's coming on something we need to do. We're here to do what's right for the kids, what's right for our community, what's right for our schools. So whatever we have to do to make that happen, we're going to do, and we're going to do it with fidelity and make sure that it's right for our kids.
And also, I propose to change the paradigm. When we used to have the situation of these wonderful things are happening, we are being successful, we are doing that. Well, if the things are happening, what are we doing on top of that? If we change the paradigm and we say, listen, we are facing these challenges, and this is our plan to address it and correct that situation, right? That is more powerful, and that says a lot more for everybody who is presenting that as leaders, like than somebody who says everything is fine, everything is beautiful, this is heaven, right? Instead of we have the challenges, this is what we are done. And we are going to give you a report, and you know what? We tried for 2 months, it didn't work, but we are going to try this. So I don't know, I feel like if we change that line of thinking on being action-oriented and problem-solving without thinking that, the board, what are they going to think, that this is happening, that this is wrong here, or things like that. So I invite you to share those concerns with us and saying, hey, we are facing this, and we are going to fix it that way. I don't know how you feel about that. Let's change that.
I think we exposed a lot of vulnerabilities
Yes,
here, and
yes.
and in terms of not forgetting about this, some of you know Judy well. I've never met a person more passionate about safety, and as I said in the beginning, while security isn't officially in her wheelhouse, I can tell you that when I walked out of closed session and briefed her, she hit the ground running, and you see the product. So
Absolutely.
she wouldn't forget even if we didn't remind her.
I'm not saying specifically, but overall.
I
talking about
gotcha.
overall. And thank you again for the time, for being prepared. I really appreciate it. That shows commitment, for the safety of our students.
So, Ms. Twyman,
Ms. Twyman.
were you on board also with what? Were you on board also with the recommendation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr.
I'm definitely on board. Actually, thank you to Judy and everybody. Collaboration is big to me because when we come together, we can brainstorm. I know it sounds so childish, but we brainstorm, and guess what? We come out with great, amazing results. And this is something I've learned in my past life as union rep. But collaborating is just awesome because, like you said, we're not coming at each other. We're coming together to unite. And I think everyone who's going to be involved is going to benefit from this because not only people who sit on the sidelines, they're going to see more that people do, what our campus supervisors do. They're going to get more involved, and they're going to thank them. People are going to, trust me, they're going to be totally empowered and to just want to gun-ho and do their job better. Thank you very much. And I just want to make sure I see everything correctly. You're also going to consider a consultant.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be. We would try. Our target would be to bring that contract in June.
Beautiful.
Who
And
knows?
again,
We
thank
may
you.
call. She may make a few phone calls. And we might find somebody tomorrow and bring a contract in May.
Right.
But I have a couple lined up, but we have. There's more conversation.
And then I did want to bring something up that I heard you mention before. We're on an analog radio system.
because we can program it, it's solid if it's emergency. Digital works really well until it doesn't. It just, when digital drops off, digital drops off. Analog's just kind of old school but real solid. We've got repeaters, we've got backup batteries. So analog, if everything else went south, we'd still have our analog radios, and you're going to lose some of your digital radios.
I'm just curious, we weren't affected by the law when they changed.
We're narrow banded, but all of our repeaters and our base stations are analog digital. So if we have to, I can go digital.
She said in the last board meeting that's her favorite
I like
subject.
You want to talk
So we
radios?
could be like here 2-3 more hours if you let her talk radios.
What? Yeah, there you go.
Oh yeah.
And we can do all of our own program. We do all of our own programming and all kinds of stuff with those analog radios.
Do you want it electronically or on paper? Okay. Well, if you just hang out for a second, we'll print you one. Yeah. Yeah. Just before you go, I'll give you one. Would anyone would? Okay, we'll just print 5. Unless there's a no. Okay.
I'll take it electronically.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Do I hear 1, 2 copies?
Let's say 3.
Okay.
2
2 paper. I heard 2 paper, right? Yeah.
Thank you for bringing it up.
I just wanted to ask, and I don't know if it's appropriate, if it's not an item, a status on the calendar, the board calendar, and the handbook, the governance handbook. How are we doing that?
That's kind of not part of this, but
The reason that I was asking is because one of the items tonight is going to be addressed in the governance handbook is how we can bring proposals to the board. And I took the liberty to, before you run the protocol, because it's not that, to send an email and to at least discuss what is the recommendation of the Department of School Associations and AXA in terms of protecting students and staff. Is it safe learning environment for schools? Also known, AKA, is it sanctuary in schools or districts, what is called a safe environment. There is a lot of here in that area, that gets me talking about the learning of our students. We heard about them at least, but I think that we were to send it, and I don't know what it's supposed to bring it here, to discuss it, to get a conversation first, to public input, or to really study the public, so everyone knows, if there's any, I don't know. And I know that that is going to be one of the elements of the protocols that is going to be included in the how do you suggest, in order not to wait to look into this and to do it? I do want to bring to attention this is not on this agenda, so we can't really do it into that agenda. Is we want to put that on the agenda for 2 weeks. Then we can talk about it more, but this is not more. I actually, it looks like you're opening up a whole regular discussion. It's not on our agenda, we're not supposed to talk. I think you are answering my
Thank you.
question. Yeah, in order to talk about that, we need to agendize it, and we can put it in the next for agenda.
Right.
So can we put it in the next
Yeah.
for agenda?
yeah, I'll get it put on.
Okay. We're on the same page. We'll start a whole discussion. No. I didn't want to get into that.
There's one other thing on safety that I wanted to bring up to the board as an item is Paloma Valley is getting very crowded. We're looking at almost 3,300 kids there next year, 3,274 next year.
There's no way to shift students around.
Well, we don't have to change the boundaries. We just have to enforce our boundaries. See, what the direction from the previous boards were, we let the kids go to any school in the district they want to go to. We didn't hold the boundaries. So my suggestion coming forward, and we won't be able to do it for next year because we already had the transfers, but for the following year is, we start notifying people that we're enforcing the boundaries now. If you want to go to Paloma Valley,
You have to live in the boundary.
you have to live in the valley or go for a specific program. Like if
What are our numbers over at Heritage and Paris?
Paris High's Heritage is about 27 something. Candace has
2814. This is the projections for next year. 2814
For Heritage.
for Heritage. And did you ask another?
Paris High.
Oh, Paris High 2243.
But we have, right now, we did some research, we have at Paloma Valley right now, 555 kids on intra-district transfers.
And we actually had 174 bad addresses that Carrie is working with the sites to fix, so that number could increase, but it wouldn't decrease.
You're talking about 500 kids. That could
That's almost a whole
shift around
class.
some of- I mean, that would bring a lot more equity to
Right.
the numbers.
You want to
we're
phase it
in
in
the
by
district.
grade, right?
But yeah, what we would look at doing it, as that we'd be doing it is, if we decide to put the boundaries back in next year, it would be only for the 9th graders. Because we already have 10th and 11th and 12th graders that are at the school, we're not gonna pull them out of the school.
I would be in favor of that.
And then the next year would be 9th and 10th graders.
Yeah.
And,
It's like opening a new school.
Yeah.
essentially.
But I think we need to look at doing that just because of the safety at that campus. If we start having 3,600 kids on that campus, that's not safe.
And what's the projection of the state selling bonds? I know.
But that kind of went along with our safety talk, and I just wanted to raise,
That's an answer we all want right now.
I wanted to raise that to the board now, and we'll look in the fall, probably bring in a proposal to say that we're going to, or all we have to need is direction, say we want to enforce the boundaries. Kids could still go to Paloma if for a specific program. Let's say a kid at Heritage wanted to be in the NGROTC. Heritage doesn't have it, they could go to Paloma, but then they have to be in the program. Or if a kid wanted to go from Paloma to Heritage, and they want to be in ag, well, they're going to be in ag. So we have some programs that are specialties to certain schools, so we'd allow them to go for those, but not just free willy, like go where you
What
want to go.
about if you have a teacher that lives in Paloma area, but Lord Heritage, would you?
That's professional courtesy, and we allow that.
That's something different. I just wanted to see if there was like loopholes that
Yeah,
we had.
professional courtesy for the employees' kids. They're still building schools down in Menifee. They opened one school this year. I think they have one or two for next year.
They just passed a bond to.
Yeah, they're building one right behind in my house in my neighborhood. Well, they haven't started yet. But.
It doesn't cost as much to build an elementary school as it does a high school.
Yeah.
There is that.
That is a great program to have. A lot of districts to have declining enrollment.
Yeah.
So
No,
there is this,
You know, you brought up the bonds and stuff, and we were considering having a study session on construction and facilities in maybe July when we don't really have a real meeting, and we set up a study session for a couple hours, and we could probably do it early in the day, so because I don't think.
I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks for vacation, so I may not be able to make that.
Well, we'll work out a schedule that works for everybody, but instead of having to come at
I made
5:30.
my vacation in July because I know we don't have a district meeting, board meeting, so.
and
Right.
what would be the objective of it?
Looking at the facilities and construction and possibly options that we have to look at as we're moving down the road, because eventually we're going to need that another school down in Menifee. And
We've
how
been
we gonna-
updated. Oh, I'm sorry, Grant.
How are we going to make that happen? We're looking at updating our school site, all our facility plans at all of our schools. So we'd have the architects that are working on that come in and make presentations on what we're doing.
I don't know, maybe because of the board meeting who I was not here, but we were waiting for the November election. That's what I remember, and we put everything on hold. Let's see what happens.
Right.
It was approved, it passed. What is
The governor doesn't actually have to sell those bonds.
We've put our name our name's on the list already for the money. Our name's on the list.
Yes, we approved it, but the
But-
governor does not have to sell bonds.
Yeah, so we're at his mercy right now, and wherever we fall in the priority list of construction.
If he sells.
Yeah.
Let's go with that.
That's something we would want to talk about during that time is the what ifs. What would we maybe have to consider doing ourselves if they don't sell the bonds and move forward, because we can't take the money we have now and build 40% of a school down there and have the community
Well,
down
we
there
also
happy
can't
with it.
open a new high school with a ton of portables either.
Right.
I mean, that's just ludicrous. So,
Yeah. Did I hit everything? Okay.
anything else?
I think that's it.
No, anything else, Ross? Anything, Mr. Garcia?
I just want to thank everybody for today. I really think that Ken Patterson, Patterson, I'm glad he came out today because I think
Motion for adjournment. Mr. Nelson makes a motion. Second. Everybody in favor, say aye. Motion approved. This meeting is adjourned at 7:03.
a little bit shorter than 2 hours.